Have you ever watched someone's entire worldview crumble in real time in front of 50 journalists and live television cameras? Bob Marley was about to do exactly that to one of America's most respected music journalists. And what happened in those 18 minutes would become the most viral press conference footage in media history. If you love discovering the untold stories behind music history's most incredible moments, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell, because we uncover the hidden gems that shaped the legends we know today. December 8, 1978, the Plaza Hotel, New York City, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The grand ballroom was packed with over 50 journalists, photographers, and television crews from major networks. Bob Marley's new album, Kaya, had just reached #1 on the Billboard charts, making him the first reggae artist to achieve this milestone. The press conference was being broadcast live on 3 major networks to an estimated 18 million viewers. Bob sat at the main table wearing a simple black button-up shirt, his dreadlocks neatly arranged, looking calm and composed despite the circus of media attention surrounding him. His manager had briefed him on potential challenging questions, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. Among the assembled journalists was Victoria Sterling, a 42-year-old music critic from Rolling Stone magazine who had built her career on sharp, often brutal interviews with rock stars. Sterling was known for her intelligence, her cutting questions, and her barely concealed disdain for what she considered primitive or non-sophisticated music forms. She had specifically requested to cover this press conference because she believed it was time someone put this reggae fad in perspective. Sterling had grown up in an upper-class Connecticut family where those people were discussed in whispers, if at all. Her father was a corporate executive who had taught her that success belonged to those who earned it through proper culture and education. In her mind, Bob Marley represented everything wrong with the direction music was heading: simple rhythms, drug references, and worst of all, the elevation of Caribbean culture to mainstream American acceptance. The first 20 minutes of the press conference proceeded normally. Journalists asked about Bob's creative process, his tour plans, his thoughts on reggae's growing popularity. Bob answered each question thoughtfully, his Jamaican accent warm and clear through the microphone system. Then Victoria Sterling raised her hand. "Mr. Marley," she began, her voice cutting through the room with practiced authority, "don't you think there's something irresponsible about promoting what is essentially primitive island music to impressionable young Americans?" The room went quiet. Other journalists looked at Sterling in surprise. Even by the standards of confrontational music journalism, the question was unnecessarily hostile. Bob looked at her with calm curiosity. "What do you mean by primitive, sister?" "Well," Sterling continued, her confidence growing, "reggae is rhythmically simple, lyrically repetitive, and largely focused on drug use and resistance to authority. It's not exactly what I'd call sophisticated music for educated audiences." Bob nodded slowly. "What kind of music do you consider sophisticated?" Sterling smirked, pleased to be directing the conversation. "Classical music, jazz, rock music with complex arrangements and meaningful lyrics? Music that challenges the intellect rather than just the base impulses." "I see," Bob said quietly. "And where do you think music comes from?" The question caught Sterling off guard. "What do you mean?" "All music. Where does it originate?" Sterling looked annoyed. "Well, from composers, from musicians, from—" "Before that," Bob interrupted gently. "Where do the rhythms come from? Where do the melodies come from?" "I'm not sure what you're getting at." Bob's voice remained calm, but his eyes held Sterling's with increasing intensity. "Music comes from the heart, sister. From the spirit. From the experiences of people trying to express their truth." "That's a nice philosophy," Sterling replied dismissively. "But it doesn't change the fact that some music is objectively more complex and valuable than others." Bob leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about your heart, Victoria." The use of her first name, spoken with such gentle familiarity, clearly unsettled her. I beg your pardon? Your heart. What makes it beat? What makes it sing? Sterling's composure began to crack. I don't see what my personal feelings have to do with this interview. Everything, Bob said. Music is about hearts connecting with hearts. If you can't feel the music, if you can't understand why it moves people, then perhaps the problem isn't with the music. Other journalists in the room were now paying close attention. This wasn't going where anyone had expected. Are you suggesting I don't understand music? Sterling's voice had an edge to it. I'm suggesting you don't understand people, Bob replied calmly. Tell me, Victoria, when you were a child, what music made you dance? Sterling looked flustered. I don't see how. What music made you feel joy? What music made you feel free? I was raised on proper music, Sterling said defensively. Classical pieces, educational songs. But what made your body move? What made your soul sing? Sterling's face reddened. My family didn't encourage that kind of physical response to music. Bob's expression grew more serious. So you were taught to think about music instead of feel it. I was taught to appreciate quality, Sterling snapped. Who taught you that reggae wasn't quality? The question hung in the air. Sterling opened her mouth, then closed it. Who taught you that Caribbean culture was primitive? Sterling shifted, uncomfortably in her seat. It's not about the culture. It's about the musical complexity. Who taught you that simple was bad? Bob's voice remained gentle, but each question was penetrating deeper into Sterling's carefully constructed worldview. My father was very clear about standards. What was your father afraid of? Sterling went silent. The entire room was watching her now, cameras rolling, capturing every moment of her visible discomfort. What was he afraid of, Victoria? I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, Bob said softly. What was he afraid would happen if you danced to music he didn't approve of? What was he afraid would happen if you connected with people who didn't look like you? Sterling's hands were visibly shaking. This is completely inappropriate. What was he afraid you would become? The question hit Sterling like a physical blow. Her carefully maintained professional composure began to crumble. He was afraid. Sterling's voice became smaller. He was afraid I would forget where I came from. And where did you come from? From a good family, from educated people, from afraid people, Bob said gently. People so afraid of losing what they had that they forgot how to gain anything new. Sterling's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. We worked hard for everything we had. And you think Caribbean people don't work hard? That's not what I meant. What do you think I did before music, Victoria? She looked at him helplessly. I worked in a welding shop, 12 hours a day in the heat and smoke trying to feed my family. My mother cleaned white people's houses for pennies. My friends cut sugarcane under the burning sun. Tell me about the complexity of that work. Tell me about the sophistication of hunger. Sterling was crying openly now. I didn't know, and yet you felt qualified to judge our music, our expression, our way of processing pain and finding joy. Bob reached into his jacket and pulled out a small photograph. He handed it to Sterling. This is my mother, Cedella. She sang to me when I was hungry, when I was scared, when I was alone. Simple songs, repetitive rhythms, primitive island music. Sterling looked at the photograph with streaming tears. An elderly Jamaican woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. When I write a song, Bob continued, I'm singing for her. I'm singing for every mother who rocks her baby to sleep with whatever melody she can remember. I'm singing for every father who hums while he works, because that's the only beauty he can create in his day. Sterling sobbed harder. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What are you sorry for? For thinking, for not understanding. Bob's voice remained gentle. For being taught that your worth came from judging others instead of connecting with them. Yes, Sterling whispered. Victoria, can I tell you something about complexity? She nodded, unable to speak. The most complex thing in the universe is a human heart. Every person's heart carries their entire story, their pain, their joy, their hopes, their fears. When music connects heart to heart, when it helps someone feel less alone, when it gives voice to experiences that have been silenced, that's the most sophisticated communication possible. Bob paused, looking at Sterling with genuine compassion. Your father taught you to be afraid of simplicity because he was afraid of authenticity. He was afraid that if you connected with real human emotion, you might question the walls he had built around your heart. Sterling looked up at Bob. How do I change something that's been inside me my whole life? Same way music changes, one note at a time, one rhythm at a time, one open heart at a time. Bob stood up and walked around the table to where Sterling was sitting. The entire room watched as he knelt beside her chair. Victoria, your heart already knows how to dance. It's just been waiting for permission. He began humming softly, a simple, repetitive melody. Then quietly, he started singing, Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be all right. The melody was exactly what Sterling had criticized. Simple, repetitive, primitive. But sitting there, listening to Bob's voice directly in her ear, she felt something she hadn't experienced since childhood. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Other journalists in the room began to understand what they were witnessing. This wasn't just an interview anymore. It was a healing. Sterling closed her eyes and let the music wash over her. For the first time in decades, she stopped thinking about music and started feeling it. When Bob finished singing, Sterling opened her eyes and looked at him. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Bob smiled. It always was, sister. You just needed to remember how to listen with your heart instead of your judgment. Sterling stood up, still crying, and did something that shocked everyone in the room, including herself. She hugged Bob Marley. Thank you, she said. Thank you for helping me find something I didn't even know I'd lost. The remaining questions of the press conference were forgotten. What had started as a routine media event had become something unprecedented, a public transformation, a moment of genuine human connection captured by cameras and broadcast to millions. The aftermath was immediate and profound. The footage of Victoria Sterling's breakdown and transformation became the most replayed clip in television history up to that point. News programs ran it repeatedly, talk shows discussed it, and within days it had become a cultural phenomenon. Victoria Sterling's life changed completely. She quit Rolling Stone magazine the next week, not out of shame, but out of a desire to start fresh. She began studying Caribbean music history, traveling to Jamaica to learn about reggae's roots in traditional folk music and its connections to African rhythms. Within 6 months, she had written a groundbreaking article for The Atlantic titled The Complexity of Simplicity: How Western Culture Taught Me to Fear Authenticity. The piece became required reading in journalism schools and cultural studies programs. Sterling spent the next decade becoming one of the foremost experts on Caribbean music and its influence on global culture. She wrote 3 books about reggae's philosophical and spiritual dimensions, all of which became bestsellers. But more importantly, Victoria Sterling became an advocate for cultural understanding and musical inclusivity. She established the Heartbeat Music Foundation in 1985, providing instruments and music education to underserved communities around the world. When Bob Marley died in 1981, Victoria Sterling was one of the speakers at his memorial service in New York. Standing before a crowd of thousands, she told the story of how a gentle Jamaican musician had saved her soul by teaching her the difference between complexity and sophistication. Bob taught me that the most sophisticated response to difference is curiosity, not judgment, she said. He taught me that the most complex emotion is love, and the most primitive behavior is hate. Sterling paused, looking out at the diverse crowd that had gathered to honor Bob's memory. I came to that press conference thinking I was the educated one, the sophisticated one, the one who understood music. But Bob showed me that all my education had taught me was how to build walls around my heart. He showed me that real sophistication comes from the courage to feel, to connect, to dance to rhythms that your mind doesn't understand, but your soul recognizes as truth. Today, at 85 years old, Victoria Sterling still works with the Heartbeat Music Foundation. Her office walls are covered with photos from her travels to Jamaica, Africa, and other places where she learned to hear music with her heart instead of her intellect. The photograph Bob gave her that day, the picture of his mother, Sadella, sits on her desk. Beside it is a handwritten note from Bob that she received shortly before his death. Victoria, music is the universal language, but love is the universal translator. Thank you for learning to speak both. One love, Bob. The footage of that December day in 1978 is still used in journalism schools as an example of what happens when interviewers become more interested in proving points than discovering truth. But it's also used in psychology courses as an example of how prejudice can be dissolved through patient, compassionate dialogue. Most importantly, it's remembered as proof that transformation is possible at any age, in any setting, for anyone brave enough to let their walls come down and their hearts open up.